Hi everyone, welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. We're back again this week with someone from the community. We have Lee Ha with us today. Lee does deep dive researching for the Brattleboro Historical Society, helping all kinds of people in our community and beyond explore and discover facts, stories, and artifacts of our local history. Lee is also the editor of the Society's newsletter, which comes out twice a year. And in 2014, she initiated the photo scanning project, beginning the transfer of thousands of old photos to digital. She did say this might well be a never-ending job. Welcome, Lee.
Hi, Wendy. Nice to be here.
It's so great to have you here, and I think you are the only person who has been so close to our studio. You are right next door. The Historical Society.
We are.
Is right next door, and that's your research room, though, right?
Yes. And it's our only room right now that's available to the public.
Oh, so the museum itself is not open right now downtown?
No. The museum we closed due to all kinds of circumstances, and so we had to clear out of there and bring our artifacts here.
Oh, that place must be jammed full of stuff.
That room is, plus we have 5 other storerooms in this building.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I didn't know that. So you may be getting new quarters at some time for the museum.
We would love that. We're working on it and see what happens in the future.
That's really great, because I think that one of the things that's been interesting about the Historical Society is having these two places. The place downtown, which is in the old Masons building, right?
Masonic
right next
Center.
to Epsilon Spires, before the post office, I think.
Yeah.
And I know that it is the place to go for people to explore and look through things, all kinds of different things, and you had a gift shop, etc.
Yep.
So if some people come up with some good ideas for real estate, they should get in touch with you folks.
That would be great.
Good to know. Didn't know we were going to be doing public service announcements today.
We still, by the way, have things for sale in the research room. We have an area that people can buy postcards and other things. Books
A gift shop kind of things.
If people come in looking for something, we show them what they can buy.
I see.
Yeah.
That's pretty great. And speaking of artifacts like that, I didn't know until about 5 minutes ago that the postcard that we use for the Here We Are, which you see right below here, I picked that out for doing the show when I first started the show. Turns out that Lee bought that on eBay, not even through the Historical Society, but it was on eBay and you just happened to like it. And
long before I ever thought of the Historical Society, and probably didn't even know it existed.
Wow.
And I just saw this postcard and I loved it. And it was the first postcard I bought from my postcard collection, new hobby back then.
Oh, that's so great. I love that story. Continuing to talk about the research room next door. You are open to the public.
Definitely.
Some hours.
Besides the hours that we publish, if someone needs to get in, if they're coming from California or anywhere, we can open on different days if a volunteer is available.
I really encourage people to stop by. It's just a cornucopia is probably the best word to use for it. And everywhere you look, there is something that's of interest. A lot of people don't look into the history of the area, but if you start seeing photographs or things, it just pulls you in.
It does.
And I know here in the municipal building, we have photographs that you folks have put up, and it's really mesmerizing. You start looking at them and you just want to keep looking and looking.
I know, they're wonderful.
They are.
That's what happened to me when I went there. I started out with photographs, and every photograph was just amazing to me.
Yeah.
And we have 10,000 photographs, like paper photographs. And we digitize those gradually. Our biggest digitizing project is the Brattleboro Reformer negatives. They gave us all their negatives from 1950 onward. Hundreds of thousands of negatives.
Oh my gosh.
That's why it's a never-ending project.
Oh, so you mean every photo that's been in the Reformer?
And more, because when reporters go out, they shoot a strip or more of negatives.
And you end up with it?
We got it. I don't know what they're doing now, but I think we have up until 2009.
You've got the old newspapers that go back to the Phoenix, the Vermont Phoenix.
And before that, the Federal Galaxy.
I love that. I wish it was still called the Federal Galaxy. It's
I love it too.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And some of them are just so interesting to look at, fragile as they are. And you've got documents, you've got oral histories.
We have obituaries, business and property binders, which tell
Right.
all the important things that happened in town as far as buildings go. And I mean, the amount of things we have is just unbelievable.
Yes.
Maps.
Right.
And the ephemera is what is most amazing. We have boxes and boxes of cataloged information about businesses and people, events, just everything.
For you, doing research, because I know that you do, as I said, you really do some deep dive research, and you described it as it's like detective work.
It is, and it's also my hobby. So we use newspapers.com, and that has all of the newspapers that we have here digitized and searchable. And it's much easier than going through page by page of the old Reformers or Phoenixes.
Right.
And it saves the newspapers as well. We don't go through them. But what happens is when you're doing that deep dive, you have a page that you're reading an article that you're interested in, but then there's an article right next to it that catches your eye. So it is a never-ending fun and discovery.
You know what's kind of interesting about that comment is that I think that's what many of us find ourselves doing on the internet, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at something, we get really interested, and then we get sidetracked and start looking at something else.
That's true.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, I find that the history from 150 years ago is more interesting to me than present day things.
Well, yes, maybe not as charged
Right,
as
that's what I
well,
mean,
right?
yeah.
So what's a regular day for you likely when you're in there doing research?
I answer phones, the phones, all the voicemails we get, voice messages, and occasionally do email research. A couple of us, will get up and help whoever comes in and try to help. If we can't find an answer, we help them to, maybe go to the library or the town clerk or somewhere to get information. And then we do the accessioning, which means things that are donated. We have to, it takes about an hour per item, so it's a long time. It's not an easy process to accession an item that someone brings in. I also, we have thank you notes and that kind of work to do. And then there's the research and the putting the newsletter together. And we have lots of projects we're working on at the same and so you do, you're almost get burned out by one and then another one comes along and sparks your interest again. And so it's, there's always something to do and there's never enough time.
Yeah. Right. But it also sounds like you get really interested and curious about one thing after another.
I do.
That's saying a lot for any job, right?
It's wonderful, and it's, I think the best thing about the Historical Society is that when a new volunteer comes in, and we have a lot of volunteers right now, we ask them, what is your interest? What is your interest? And we try very hard to get them into something they like. We have a great group of volunteers right now.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Are you always needing more, like many nonprofits?
We could use more, except we have nowhere to put them because we're so short on space.
What thing is the most fun for you of all of those different tasks?
Oh boy, that's hard. Well, I kind of made a new hobby for myself through the Historical Society and during COVID, actually. And that is going through cemeteries, taking pictures of different graves that are interesting to me, and then researching the person. And I must have 800 grave pictures on my phone. And, and then when I have a downtime, I want to just do something, I just start researching them.
The individuals, yes. And sometimes, when you see like a whole family, or you see like the kids that died at such early ages.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's so many. I've been in a lot of cemeteries, and you just wonder. You walk around wondering.
Yeah, and that's exactly what draws me to the graves.
Yeah.
Is sometimes it's a name, like that's an unusual name, or a date, or several people died on exactly the same day.
Right.
Or, you know.
And
whatever.
some of the sayings on them,
they're
too,
beautiful.
are really fabulous. Yeah. And we've got a lot, not just in Brattleboro, but all the outlying areas, and so many family cemeteries as well. The newsletter, you know, someone said, this is a quote, that the newsletter is more than a newsletter. It's a full-on Brattleboro history that comes out twice a year.
Oh, thank you.
They actually refer to it as a magazine.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. So how do people get a hold of a copy of this?
If you become a member, which you automatically get one every summer and then winter, and you have to renew to keep on getting it.
And is this all research that you have done and written up?
Yeah, not just me. During COVID, it was probably just me, but or almost because there wasn't anyone else there. But yeah, anybody, even town people, can send in an idea or a submission, and we don't have that very often. People on the board write. We have a great board that has such various jobs that they can look at everything differently than, you know, everyone else. And so we have a really wonderful piece coming out in the next newsletter, written by Josh Carnes, who's he's an engineer in public works, so he's off in the middle of nowhere all the time.
Yeah.
And finds old roads and everything, and it's just fabulous.
I would love to say and to encourage people to check out your website. You've got a very rich website when it comes to visuals, you know, and also information. So it's I learned so much by looking at your website. I know it's good. It's good to hear that, right?
Yes.
But there's just so much, and I did not know about the podcast project that's been going on with the middle school kids, who have over 400 podcasts.
Right.
And they're individual topics that they research, and it's just so fabulous because it's 3 or 4 different kids talking about whatever they've researched. And it was Joe Rivers, I believe, who put that together.
And he still does, and he works with his kids. They write the article for the Reformer, and then they read it, and that's the podcast.
And it's also on, well, it used to be on KVT, but now it's WTSA that is broadcast, the podcast.
I don't listen to it on there. I listen to it as a podcast, so that's good to know it's still on.
They're so much fun. You know, I just learned, I was listening to one the other day, I learned all about Estieville, you know, which I'd known about Estieville, but I had no idea the deep history of it. So, yeah, I really suggest that people take a look and take a listen at the website.
Really, the podcasts are so much fun because the kids do a great job.
They do. They do a wonderful job.
Amazing.
And also, you know, imagining them doing the research themselves. I mean, what great way to do in-place history. You know, finding out about, you know, what was here before, and just all the various topics. Over 400. I mean, it's pretty amazing. It is. Going back to the beginning of the Historical Society, it's been around for 40 years, which doesn't seem like a long time for an historical society. But I was reading that John Carnahan, our wonderful John Carnahan, who has been such a great force in this community. He and his wife Mary, who just recently got an award at the State House for being such good citizens and involved in so much. But according to him, the publication of Before Our Time, a pictorial memoir of Brattleboro, Vermont, from 1830 to 1930, came out, was published by Stephen Green Press, published in 1974, and it gave the motivation for, he said, several of us to organize a historical society. Now, I just learned before we started taping today that you also were inspired with the same book.
I definitely was. I had no interest in history in Brattleboro until I had that book.
Wow.
And when I saw it, it was, in a month it was tattered because I read it and read it and the pictures are incredible in it. It's no longer in print, unfortunately.
yeah.
And we might have a couple copies for sale still, but.
And this is Stephen Green Press,
Yes.
which is our hometown press, which he and his wife started. They actually were the owners of the bookseller back in the 70s. And Stephanie Green, their daughter, has been part of the literary festival, I think, since the very beginning. But that was such a wonderful press, and they did so many great Vermont books. Also, a lot of books about the land of Vermont and ecology back then as well. So that's another wonderful historical fact about Brattleboro. Lee, you're born in Connecticut, and then you spent some time in Florida, came back to Connecticut. When you were a kid, what kind of influences did you have? What were you interested in doing?
I grew up in Florida, very close to the water, to the Gulf of Mexico. I was in St. Petersburg. And so my interests were pretty much 100% biology, marine biology. I had 7 saltwater aquariums at one time. I mean, I was just completely immersed in anything to do with the ocean or the Gulf of Mexico. But then my mother passed away, and I moved to Connecticut to live with my father and his wife. And it kind of lost, I like that southern ocean type feel, and not necessarily Long Island Sound.
A little different, yeah.
Yeah. I was still interested in biology because my father was a veterinarian, and it was interesting to me. But I didn't pursue that.
So there wasn't a history component back then.
Oh no, my history teachers turned me off to history completely. It was the most boring subject I ever had in my life.
Again, I think that really speaks to, learning history in place, to begin with, learn, and it takes in geology, it takes in so many different facets.
I've actually told Joe Rivers several times, if you were my teacher, I would have gone into history because he is so fabulous at explaining history.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah. And I'm sure that he gets the kids interested and fired up for the podcasts as well. And you married a man who was from Viet Nam.
I did.
And he was a Vietnamese refugee.
Yes.
Who had come to America after kind of a long and winding road. You ended up in Brattleboro, though, somehow.
We did. We had nowhere to go, nowhere to be, and it was, young love, it's exciting, and we went across the country a couple times and lived in Houston, worked in Houston for a while, but we came back to Connecticut and had a family reunion in Ellsworth, Maine, at my brother's house. And on the way back, we were going back to Connecticut, and then we came across New Hampshire to exit 3 in Brattleboro and went over the Chesterfield Bridge and made our way down through Brattleboro on Main Street. And I said to my husband, let's just stop wherever we see a realtor and we'll just ask, what can we lose? And got all the way to exit 1 in Martucci and Henry, and there I said, let's just try whatever. And we went in, a lovely young woman who I know to this day, and she, we told her our situation, and she said, I have one house that you could buy. And we were without a job. It was pretty amazing.
Your kids went K through 12 here?
They did.
They did. And you had, you and your husband had a cleaning and maintenance business for many years.
We started it, and then when we were doing that for a while, we had some commercial cleaning jobs, and then our marriage kind of started falling apart, and we separated and eventually divorced, but I turned that business into a commercial cleaning service. And did many offices around town. The biggest was at the time, it was called Brattleboro Area Land Trust.
Yes.
It was on High Street.
Yes.
And then and we cleaned their offices, and then they hired us to clean some of their buildings, just the common areas. And then they just, after I was separated, they just kept on buying more buildings, and I kept cleaning. But I still had all kinds of jobs all over town, so I was working all the time.
And did you have a staff? of people?
After a while,
Yeah,
I was afraid people wouldn't clean as well as I did, and so it was
you
really
go.
hard to hire anyone.
That's the curse of being good at cleaning.
Ooh,
Yeah.
But I found two lovely women who were perfect for
good.
what we were
Great.
doing. So yeah.
And when you were young, in your the younger years of your marriage, you actually took a trip to Vietnam.
Yes, when our kids, it was in 93 and 94, I think.
So you went with your kids.
We did.
What was that like for you and for your husband to go back?
Well, he hadn't seen his mother in years since he had come to the U.S. And I wanted to get him there to do that, just to get there. And I wanted to take a picture of him with his mother the first time.
Yeah.
And I got it. I was so happy. And it was pretty dramatic being there. The State Department, I contacted them and they said, don't go. We don't have relations with them.
Oh, wow. This is 90s?
Yeah.
Yeah, uh-huh.
But we went anyway. And the second trip we landed, and while we were in the air, the U.S. and Vietnam signed business relations. And so when we got there and landed at the airport, we came out to the parking lot and they were inflating a giant Pepsi can in the middle of the parking lot. And we said, okay, they must have signed it.
They must be friends. Oh, man.
So it was pretty interesting.
Yeah. What were your impressions of Vietnam?
It is a beautiful place. But we were in it was an island. You wouldn't know it was an island, but it was an island, and sanitary conditions were horrible. I got very sick there, but survived.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was. I think his family was incredibly loving to me. We couldn't communicate well. We used a book if we needed to. I knew enough short phrases to get by. But it was so different than anything I'd ever seen, and I loved every second of it.
Oh.
Every second.
Yeah.
Except when I was sick.
Yeah, right.
And there wasn't a doctor.
Right.
Where I went, my mother-in-law's house, we had been sending money to them, so they built a beautiful house where many people around them just had shacks, tin shacks.
Wow.
And we helped them by buying them a fishing boat as well, so they could take care of themselves.
Yes. Do your kids have ties to Vietnam?
They've been a couple times, but I don't think they haven't been back lately. Yeah, they got to see their grandmother again before she passed.
Oh, that's
so
good.
That was great.
Going back to the Historical Society a little bit, Lee, have you had surprises?
I think that one of our newer volunteers, although he's been there probably a year and a half now, always says what everyone thinks, and when people come in, you never know what they're going to say or ask for, and it's almost, it's almost like I look at people and I say, what are they going to ask? I try to guess.
Yeah.
But he said that's what he loves about it, is you never know. So there are surprises all the time. All the time.
Yeah.
And I just read a book last night. I was reading part of a book last night and learned something new. Other people might know it, but I didn't, and I got that excitement.
Yes.
I'm so happy I learned that.
Yes.
So
new pieces of information about a place you know very well.
Right.
I know that you're still unearthing things. I'm sure there's still things in boxes that you haven't gotten to. And going along the lines of surprises, have there been things that have really really astounded you?
Yeah, I was looking through one of our storerooms, which people hadn't looked in. You go in and you can pull things out you need, but you don't go poking in boxes if it's something you don't need. But I had some free time, and I found this great box of actually movies from the 1930s.
Wow.
Taken on Main Street. A lot of them were Main Street with Arthur Clapp, and he had one of the last houses on Main Street. Because it was residential for so long.
Yes.
And there he is, standing and moving.
Wow.
We were so used to seeing these still images, and it was pretty incredible. When we got them digitized, it was simply amazing.
Oh, yeah.
We showed them we had presentation at the River Garden, and we showed them there. They're very popular. We just put them on a loop, and that was probably what people just stood around watching. And yeah, you could see all kinds of
That's
things.
so cool. And so these are the earliest films that you have of Brattleboro.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I showed them to everyone. Oh, I didn't know we had those. Nobody knew about them.
Right.
So it was pretty exciting.
Well, you know, again, you know, going back to if the Historical Society has been active for 40 years, there must be lots of stuff that hasn't been discovered yet, right?
You mean in our storerooms?
Yes.
Yeah, what happened is some things came in that were not before me, that were not accessioned. And so we have some items that are packed away that we have to research. And we're doing the best we can.
Yeah.
It's a big project.
Do you have younger people coming in, kids from high school?
Last year, this amazing young man came in from high school. He was in 10th grade, and he helped us with this one project. He likes computers, so I put him on this great project, and we haven't seen him since school started, but that's okay. We hope he comes back.
Yes, right, right.
When I started at the Historical Society and I walked in the door, I was shocked at not only the amount of things that there were in there, I had no idea, but the age of the volunteers.
Oh.
They were all in their 70s and 80s,
Yeah.
and I was shocked.
Yeah.
And then I sort of fit in, I guess. I love, you know, people older than me, although now it's me that's one of those.
That's such a shock.
But yeah, I loved every one of those people, and some of them were original with when the Historical Society was opened, John Carnahan being one of them. Yeah.
Boy, I hope you can get some younger people in, because I do think that, you know, diving in, you know, can be fascinating for a lot of kids.
I think so too.
Yeah,
But, you know,
the fact that there was a mammoth tusk found, we're not really sure of what the origin story really is there, but the fact that you know, Annette Spaulding, who has found the petroglyphs.
Yeah.
So there is real ancient history here as well.
There is.
You have some current projects going on, I believe.
Right now I'm working on, with Joe Rivers, on the Prospect Hill Cemetery walking tour, where we'll discuss different people that maybe people haven't heard of before.
Yeah.
And that all stemmed from the fact that he does exactly what I do, and in his free time he takes his dog to the cemetery as well, and we have only run into each other once, and that was the other day. And
Do you say, here, I want you to meet my new friend over here?
oh, yeah, that was funny yesterday when we were trying to map out the walk, make sure we know where everything is, and we were both just stuck on every grave that we weren't even researching. We just, oh, look at this one, look at this one. So it was a lot of fun. So I'm doing that. The newsletter will be next, and the people in the room, there's one man that took over doing, when the woman who had been doing it for 35 years passed away, he took over doing current news, which is important to save. And then there's the scanning project, which another volunteer does, and he puts that on Facebook all the time, so he's amazing at that and doing then and now, and he uses a drone and sometimes puts those things up.
And who is that?
His name is Bob Cornelia.
Yes, I've seen his name. Okay, so now there's a rumor going around that the Brattleboro Historical Society Facebook page is the most visited United States Historical Society site on Facebook.
Oh, I haven't heard in the United States. I've only heard Vermont. So if it's
Vermont,
true,
United
that's
States.
awesome. Hey, we are, right? I hope so. That's great. It is a great, great resource and lots of fun. The community gets very involved in that.
Yes, yes. And I think a big part of that too, I know whenever I look at it, I get stuck there for a while, because the before and after shots are really fascinating.
Yeah.
And you look at the old one, you think, okay, where is this, and then you get the answer, you know, it's very satisfying.
I love that. I started the column in the newsletter called Then and Now. I love that part.
Yeah, I think that's really, and I think that's really fun for kids as well.
Oh, yeah.
You know. Lee, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's been really wonderful having you on the show, and I think you know, getting a view into what you folks do is really I think it's really important for folks to know, what's going on and how accessible that you are for the public, and also how accessible all of these random things from Brattleboro, photographs and ephemera and artifacts are as well.
Come and see us.
Exactly. Yeah, check out the website, which is just really wonderful and really fun. You might get sidetracked by a few things, which is not a bad thing to happen. And stay tuned to see what happens in finding a new home for the Brattleboro Historical Society.
We'll let you know.
Put the word out. Yeah, we'll do our best.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure. Wonderful to have Leon to hear more about the Historical Society that we all know about. But boy, once you get in there, it's hard to get out. It's really fun. So stay tuned. We'll be back again next week, and we wish you all well. See you then.